Welcome to Hollywood Talks. My name is Bella Hernandez Castillo, and we have an amazing interview today. We are going to be speaking to Luis Salgado. He's an award-winning director and choreographer. He's been in some of the most amazing musicals that include The Mambo Kings, A Chorus Line, In the Heights, and in 2008, he became an assistant choreographer for the Tony Award-winning musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda, In the Heights. And currently, he's here in Los Angeles, Orange County, and he's directing the musical On Your Feet, and it is the inspiring story of Emilio and Gloria Estefan.
No, you can't control yourself any longer. Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer.
We are so excited to have Luis Salgado with us today. Welcome to Hollywood Talks, Luis.
Hola, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having the space to celebrate our community in Hispanic Heritage Month. So,
tell us a little bit about how you got involved in musical theater or acting, because you were in Puerto Rico. Did you always dream of coming to New York, or tell us that story?
well, no, I didn't necessarily have like, oh, I want to go to New York. I learned the arts at a very earlier age. I was 9 years old in a public school. I will always honor and celebrate the fact that, I came from el patio de la escuela, teachers that really gave themselves to us as students. And I just loved it. It changed the way I looked at myself, the way I look at the people around me, the way I look at the culture and the history. Funny stories I have is that I live like 5 minutes away from my elementary school, and so we were in the middle of a show and there were no curtains, and so I was like, wait, we can go on with rehearsals. We need curtains. So I ran to my house and I put my bed sheets out of my bed and I ran back to this community center that was our theater, and we all like hang up my bed sheets as our curtain. And at that moment, I knew this is what I want to do with my life. So I did it in elementary school, intermediate school, and then that same teacher, his name is Jose Javier Rivera, took me to my very first professional ballet and jazz classes. And within a week, the training that he has given me was so good that I started working. I got offers to work. So at age 15, I started working, and that then led into my passion for musical theater and wanting to move to New York as a goal.
Well, that's an amazing story. You were born to be a performer, producer, actually, because that was a production thing you did. You said the show must go on, and you
True.
made it happen. That's
You
amazing.
you're giving that focus to me right now because I actually never looked at it that way. I just saw like, oh, I want to be in this and I want it to be good. But you're right that we were already doing more than the triple threat, right? We were singing, acting, dancing, and looking at the producing details. So you're absolutely right.
So, how did you make the move to New York?
Yeah, so I was studying in La Universidad de Puerto Rico, our main central college in the island. I entered there through auditioning as an actor. I focus in the acting area per se, and I loved it. Loved learning all the elements and the directorial ideas that they were around campus. But I really wanted more. I was hungry for more, and I started traveling to New York City to take classes at Broadway Dance Center. I actually say Broadway Dance Center was like my Disneyland because every summer when I went there, my spirit was full. And the teacher started telling me, you should come to New York. There's a space for you here. And I believed their words, and therefore I started saving, and I saved $4,000 that I thought were going to last me for 6 months. And in New York City, if you know this, that's like 3 weeks of living there. And so yeah, I took the leap of faith after saving for an entire year, and the rest really is history. I never returned because I saw myself in everything that I was able to do and learn and grow with. So here I am still 20 something years later.
How hard was it to get your foot in the door? Because did people know you? Did you have connections already?
I didn't know anybody. I had no connections. The only connection was the person that actually I'm going to see here in LA today. His name is Jesus Aponte. beautiful dancer from Puerto Rico, and he had an apartment with basically his living room was available. So he's like, if you come to New York, you can rent my living room. Like we're two dancers in this apartment. And I remember I went on into New York. This was January 2022, and he literally like I got the suitcases. We did our dinners. We said hello, whatever. And he's like, tonight you're coming dancing with me. And he took me to the studios, Editor Studios, and I was like learning salsa there, meeting all these people, and it really was like a welcome. You know, it was a real welcome. But other than that, I didn't have any connections on Broadway or any connections on any of the theatrical, areas. So I will tell you this: the difference between the digital outlets today and a newspaper. Back in the day, there was the Backstage newspaper, was a print out newspaper, and I will buy that religiously every Thursday. And I will like circle the things that call my attention, and I didn't have an agent. So I will start looking at the places that I felt was calling me attention wise and energy wise, and I would go and show up and make the long lines and audition. And one of those you mentioned at the early introduction, it was Fame on 42nd Street. I literally did the cinema film version of what you see. When you see these movies
Yeah.
about New York, I was on 42nd Street, in the middle of Times Square, going around. There was a line of over 500 people auditioning in the Little Schubert Theater. And where they were 500, they were 100, they were 50, they were 25, and among those 25, I was there. And we were four people at the end of the day that day, and I thought I had gotten the job, and I did not. This guy, Ryan Shoto, got the show. He had actually been doing something in TV, like American Idol or something like that, and had obviously a popularity plus a talent, and he got it. And then like 2 weeks later, production called me and says, "Hey, we have an opening again, and we think you'd be perfect for it. Can you audition in a private audition?" The private audition turned out to be like 75 people in the theater, and again, 75, 50, 25. There's four people left. And 2 hours after I left that theater, I got this phone call. You got the job. Can you start tomorrow? And that was how I got there.
That's an amazing story, but I just want you to back up a little bit. You said 2022.
I lied. That was a mistake because I think that was yesterday, 2002.
Yes. Okay. Just
Thanks
want
for
to,
the
just in
correction.
case people are going like, wait a minute. No,
No.
that's an amazing musical. That's an amazing. Did you see it? Did you ever see it on Broadway?
Yeah, I mean, I before I got in, I studied that show. I probably went to see it like 4 or 5 times. And my friend David Garcia, que en paz descanse, was in it. And I would go and see him perform and give his 1000% on that show. And I was like, I would go and talk to him afterwards and be like, "Hey, dude, you were so good. Tell me, like, how does it feel?" And it really, like, you're touching me because it reminds me of that hunger. It reminds me of that struggle, and enough people like him that I remember one of the sad things was David told me like I don't dare speak Spanish, because in school they were bullying me for speaking Spanish, and um, that wasn't cool to me. And after that experience, I've been able to celebrate our language and celebrate our culture and celebrate our rhythms in an authentic way on the Broadway field. And actually, I dedicate that right now to David Garcia.
So now let's talk about you making that jump from being on stage to being an assistant choreographer. And do you miss acting on the side?
Well, that was a period of time. That's back in 2007. So I've been only for 5, 6 years in New York City. And Andy Blackenbuehler calls me one day, thanks to Joey Darling, another great dancer, and says, "Hey, I want you to coach me on the Latin rhythms." And so we started going to his studio, and I taught him about salsa and merengue and plena and seis and bomba. And our relationship grew real quick. And he's such a student of art, and so it became very inspirational to me to see somebody like Andy Blackenbuehler, who went out to choreograph, Hamilton, and you know the history of that with both him and Lin Manuel Miranda and Tommy Kail, what they accomplished with that. So being in the room, seeing Andy working what he calls the blueprint, how he's looking at a script, how he's looking at the music, how he's looking at the process of creation, like it was just inspiring. It was like the master class that I didn't finish taking in college. I was taking it with one of the greatest of this era. And that's one example of many, right? I can name Jerry Mitchell, Sergio Trujillo, who I've been able to be close to and learn from them as well. So it was just a given that I was going to be in the show and contribute artistically to the show. And the rest is a little bit of history because In the Heights opened such a big door for our Latina community on Broadway. If I count the amount of productions I've been able to choreograph and direct at this moment and the amount of people I've been able to employ through it, it really is. I mean, I'm just humble to and grateful to the universe for letting me do what I love and being able to share that. So that was a stage where I was performing and being part of creation. But it became really clear to me that my passion is now in telling new stories about our people, not limited to the Latino experience, but that I can always angle that quote unquote immigrant, history.
How did this happen with On Your Feet? Did they come to you, and how long ago did that happen?
Well, funny enough, I mean, it's funny because you're really taking me through a journey of storytelling here. I was doing On Your Feet on Broadway as a performer, and I got asked by Gala Theater, a theater in Washington, D.C. that's been for around 40 years, providing a space for a Latina community to direct and choreograph In the Heights. But when I asked for the time off on my Broadway contract, production wasn't in a place that they could let me go at that time. And it became a little bit of the balance between, do I continue to perform on a Broadway show, or do I let go of this Broadway show so that I can fulfill the very solid dream I have of being a creative and a voice of my people through the arts. And so I quit the show on Broadway. And I believe that Jerry Mitchell took that very serious, as far as like, and Sergio Trujillo himself said to me, if you hang up your gloves because you want to be a creative, make sure that you're hanging up your gloves and you're committing to that creation path. And so I felt supported. And Jerry Mitchell called me like 6 months after I had, finished the show On Your Feet and the show had closed. I had done my production of In the Heights. And I remember I was in Oregon watching theater in the Oregon Shakespeare theater space. And Jerry called me and said, "Hey, I need you." And I was like, "Okay, how can I help?" He's like, "I have the On Your Feet production is going to Amsterdam. I'm busy with another show. And the senor is busy with the national tour in the United States. So I'm gonna need you to step up to the plate and be my associate director and put the show up." And I was like, "Oh my God." And so that gave me so much confidence in myself and in my storytelling capabilities. And I went to Amsterdam and did the show. And Jerry came in 3 days before we opened, finished tech with me, gave me notes, coached me through a couple of areas that he thought we could, iron things out, and kept learning from him. And we opened the show, and the show was a success. And I gained that confidence, but also my mentor, Sergio Trujillo, saw that I had become really the director that he said, if you're going to hang up the clubs, go. And so the next experience I got was, being an associate director, associate choreographer for Cirque du Soleil, that then now Sergio called me. And so like all these journeys, one takes you to the next. And again, I tell it out and sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this is really my
I
life.
didn't believe that you did all of that. So when you do a show and you travel it that way, do you cast locally or do you bring your main stars?
Well, that's a great question, and that changes depending on what it is. This is a particular tour, so for the tour, we look around the entire world. Like my Emilio is a guy from Venezuela, that I actually have had within my nonprofit organization, Revolución Latina, in work and in training. I've seen this man grow, and I'm admiring of Samuel Garnica. So he's from Venezuela. Who plays our Gloria, Estefan, is from Mexico. Like literally, I call her when she was in Mexico doing a show, and I was like, "Hey, I have a project you might really want to consider. Would you want to send your auditions?" And so, like, we scout from all around the world. So we got people from all Latin America, people from New York, people from LA. Which is different. Like I was here last year in California area. I was in Ventura directing In the Heights at the Rubicon Theater, and that was mostly our focus was to cast 80% of the show at least from the California area.
Can you tell them about this production?
Yeah, well, I think you already said it. Number one, the music drives the piece, right? This music is incredible. It represents and honors our people, our culture, our music, our rhythms, our passion. I tell a joke that I was 5 years old, in the living room of my house, and on these dancing the conga, and here I am directing the show. Like, it's a music that so many of us were raised with, that we feel so much pride of. But then there's a generation that is coming up that might not know it necessarily the same way that we feel about it, and that's really engaging for me. Like, I want to make sure that this sound, this music, continues to be of impact to our world. Period. That's one thing. The other thing that I think people oversee easily is that we have an incredible script by Alexander Deninaris, who took Gloria and Emilio's story and put it in real musical theater form. And it focuses on a main issue, well, two main issues. One, a family conflict between Gloria and her mother, and the dynamics with her father, who had to go to war and develop multiple sclerosis and etc., versus the coming out of the dark, and both, that is, the not being embraced at first for who you are, number one, and number two, that they had a bus accident where Gloria herself didn't know if she was going to be able to continue her path as an artist. And that's a very inspiring story to tell. You can be in any circumstance in your life, and you can see this journey and feel inspired to come out of the dark, and that's kind of like what we want to do every time that we perform, get
Yes.
people inspired to get out of the dark.
Have you had the chance to speak with Gloria and Emilio?
I've been so fortunate that they held my baby when he was 1 year old, and now he's 9. And the other day we were
Whoa.
in a theater, and they were there checking his hair. So yeah, I've been able to be around them. The most inspiring story from them in my life is, they came to Washington D.C. to the premiere we did in the Spanish language version of On Your Feet, and Emilio was sitting by my side, and like, touching me in the knees and be like, "Good job, buddy." And then the show finished, and he came to me and was like, "So next week I have a project with the president of the United States, and I think you'd be the person to do it." I was like, "What?" So I ended up coming to California, to do this. It's like all the presidents of all the nations of the Latino community and other areas come together on this day to have a conversation. And so we put together like a 45-minute show that introduced that event, como de las Naciones Unidas, and Emilio was basically producing and basically directing. And he called me. It's like, "You want to direct, choreograph this with me?" And it's like, "Absolutely, yes."
The production is amazing. So everyone remember to go and watch and get your tickets now, because it only runs from October 6th to the 29th. So hurry up and get the tickets. Thank you so much, Luis.
Thank
It's
you, Belle. Such an
so
honor to
pleasure
meet
to
you.
meet you.
Same, lo mismo digo. Muchas gracias.